A few days after my husband, Tom, was promoted to section manager, his mother, Mary, came to celebrate. I looked at the dining table and tilted my head in wonder. I can't find the gift for the promotion I left out last night. Hey, do you know where is the package I left on the dining table last night? I asked Tom when he came back to the living room, and he flashed a mean smile.
Do you mean the thing you gave me? I threw that cheap stuff out.
I was taken aback.
It was in the paper bag, right? The custom-made dress shirt with my name on it were too tacky to wear.
I smiled thinly. I see. So this is what he always thought. For every birthday or anniversary, I went to the department store, picked out stylish socks or handkerchiefs, and gave them to him. But Tom always took them with a sense of entitlement, and never thanks me. Too bad. The gift in the paper bag was not from me. I'm actually looking forward to what kind of showdown this will turn into. It's time for him to pay up for all the times he's belittled me. I'm Laura, a 38-year-old housewife. 2 years ago, I married Tom, and since then, I've been working part-time. Tom and I met through the introduction of our respective bosses while he was working at the parent company of my workplace. As all our friends and colleagues started getting married one after the other, I was feeling quite rushed, so I was thankful to my boss for introducing me to such a wonderful person. Tom's confident and his cheerful personality drew me in, and I had no doubts that I could build a wonderful home with him, so I happily accepted his proposal a year later. Little did I know that I would regret it in less than 6 months. As soon as we got married, Tom revealed his arrogant true nature. The first sign of trouble was right when he made a grumpy remark after our honeymoon.
How long are you going to keep working?
What do you mean?
We can live on my salary. Quit your job, will you?
I was stunned. No, it's not like the times when we have to live relying only on the husband's salary. I want to have children eventually, and I want to save up while I can.
Fine, I'll allow you to work, but make it part-time. What if you neglect the housework?
We're both working, so it's only natural for the chores to be shared. Tom scoffed.
Come on, Laura, you earn less than I do, and you're telling me what to do? That's ridiculous. My mom always kept the house spotless and dedicated herself to my dad, who has passed away. Well, that's only natural for a wife, I guess. I don't mind taking out the trash.
Tom's mother, Mary, was a stay-at-home mom, and it seems his father was a dominant husband. It's troublesome to be demanded to act that way in this day and age. Arguing seemed pointless, so I just sighed and ended the conversation. First, I asked my workplace if I could switch from a full-time employee to a part-time position that finishes at 3 p.m. I thought that after several discussions, they would understand, but I was soon disheartened. Tom just wouldn't listen, and his disdainful attitude towards me only got worse. What really exasperated me was his fussiness about our daily meal menus. Despite being completely incapable of cooking, Tom was picky about what he wanted. One holiday I was bedridden with a high fever, and he came to my bedside and said,
Lunch isn't ready yet?
Barely awake, I opened my eyes slightly and croaked out, Sorry. I don't think I can manage to get up and cook.
I am good with anything like something simple like pasta.
How is pasta simple? I wanted to argue back, but I didn't have the energy and weakly replied, Just have some instant curry or noodle then.
What? You can't even prepare lunch? That's a fail as a wife. Take care of yourself properly.
Tom didn't show any concern for me and just ate his instant noodles with displeasure. I had no choice but to heat up some ready-made rice in the microwave for myself. A month later, he caught a cold and made a huge fuss, claiming, I caught this from Laura, and forced me to cook for him and nurse him all night. When I refused because I had work the next day, he glared at me furiously.
You're so cold as a wife. Don't you care a little more about your husband? I'm going through a tough time here. Worry about me more.
Moreover, Tom also had me prepare lunch boxes because buying ready-made meals from the supermarket or eating out was too expensive for him. He never thanked me for any of it, just imposed strict rules. Tom insisted that I couldn't use leftovers or frozen food for meals as everything had to be homemade. For breakfast, I was ordered to serve healthy meals, mainly consisting of bread and vegetables. The specified menu included vegetable soup, egg dishes, fruits, toasts, and coffee. I was required to change the daily meal menus every day. Gradually, even during work, I couldn't stop thinking about the contents of the lunchbox and meal menus, and my spirits sank deeper and deeper. I thought about a divorce, although we got married recently, but I felt wrong for my boss who had introduced us. My father and mother had passed away, but it was hard to complain to friends, so I stewed in my frustrations alone. Despite everything, I kept trying to get along with Tom. On our anniversary, I made his favorite dish, gratin, and waited up late for him to come home. However, an unexpected business trip kept him away until the next day. In spite of the situation, I bought him stylish t-shirts from department stores on our special occasions. When I gave them to him, he showed no reaction and never wore them. Then, one day, Tom sent me a message with a photo attached during a work break.
Order this product online. You get a discount as a member, right?
Sure, but are you going to use it?
It's a return gift for something I got from my coworker. I need to reciprocate, right?
It was a pair of wine glasses from a well-known brand. Could it be a gift for someone he's having an affair with? The question almost slipped out, but I held it back. Surely, he wouldn't be so brazen as to ask his wife to buy a gift for his mistress. One day, Tom called me during a lunch break at work.
Listen, I've been promoted to a section manager.
Wow, congratulations. We should celebrate tonight.
No, I'll be with my coworkers, so it's okay.
Tom looks being in a good mood and I found him somewhat endearing and smiled. Tom is usually full of sarcasm, but I thought I should at least celebrate his promotion, so after a simple dinner while watching TV, my cell phone rang. It was a message from Tom. As I checked the screen, I almost stopped breathing.
I'm heading to your house now, honey. Looking forward to my celebration present. Get out those wine glasses I gave you last time.
I was staring blankly at my phone screen and another message came through.
I won't let you sleep tonight, honey. Oh my God, I really don't want to go back to a poor-looking Laura's house.
He must have sent it to the wrong person. Undoubtedly, it was evidence of him having an affair with someone. Even though I should have fallen out of love by now, tears blurred my eyes in shock. My head spun as I was filled with sorrow and intense anger. I took a deep breath to calm down and quickly took a screenshot of the messages before Tom could realize his mistake and delete them. After that, even as I watched TV, nothing registered in my mind, and I took a shower to try to clear my troubled thoughts. As I was drying my hair, Tom came home. Going to the living room, I found him sprawled on the sofa, his face red and snoring. The smell of alcohol mixed with body wash was nauseating. Holding my nose, I glanced at the high-end paper bag at the foot of the sofa. Inside was a square package tied with a ribbon and a message card that had fallen to the floor. I picked it up, put back in the bag, and saw the messages with cute handwriting on it.
Tom, congratulations on your promotion. You are now a manager at such a big company. That's impressive. I'm looking forward to our weekend drive date.
I smiled thinly. Tom works at a small to medium-sized company. Has Tom told his mistress about where he works at? And to think he just got promoted to a section manager and he's lying about being a manager. He's always trying to impress. I can't believe he'd ask me as his wife to return a gift to his mistress just to save a few bucks on shipping. I glared at Tom's sleeping face, drooling sloppily with anger. On a holiday that was a week after Tom's promotion announcement. Tom and I both had the day off, so we planned to sleep in late, but I ended up waking up earlier than usual. When I woke up to use the bathroom and felt someone's presence downstairs, I went down to find Tom's mother, Mary, in an apron in the kitchen. Mary, who was tying up chunks of beef and chicken, frowned when she saw me.
Finally up? Sleeping in late for a housewife?
Mary, it's only 5 a.m. I yawned as I watched Mary prepare the food. By the way, Mary, what brings you here today? You have a copy of Key?
It's obviously for Tom's promotion celebration. I heard he has a business trip this weekend, so we postponed it to today.
As Mary smiled broadly, I muttered to myself. It's not a business trip, but a weekend getaway with his mistress. And why is she cooking meat so early in the morning? Could it be she's planning to cook a feast all day? Despite my ominous feeling, I didn't ask any more questions, changed into my casual clothes, and started doing laundry. Weekends finally came and I wanted to sleep more, but it was going to be difficult to go back to bed now. After a while, the delicious smell of cooking meat wafted through the kitchen. I like roast beef and grilled chicken too, but I certainly wasn't in the mood to eat them first thing in the morning. As Mary hummed and made a salad next to the sink full of dishes, I started preparing breakfast. Tom has not showed no signs of waking up and I was getting impatient with it, but Mary asked me.
Laura, what time does Tom usually get up?
He sleeps in until about 10 a.m. on his days off.
He must be tired from working every day. Well, that's fine. The party is tonight anyway. By the way, Laura, are you working today?
I have the day off today too.
Well, is that so?
Mary looked over at me with apparent annoyance, finished cooking the feast without doing any dishes, and then heavily sat down on the sofa and started watching a variety show on TV. After a while, Tom finally woke up and was shocked to see his mother acting like she owned the living room.
Mom, why are you here?
Tom, good morning. I came for a surprise party to celebrate your promotion tonight. You are promoted to a manager at such a big company, and I can brag about it to the neighbors.
Well, thanks.
Tom glanced awkwardly at me and then went to the bathroom. I was amazed that he had even lied to his own parents. I looked at the dining table and tilted my head in wonder. I can't find the gift for the promotion I left out last night. Hey, do you know where is the package I left on the dining table last night? I asked Tom when he came back to the living room and he flashed a mean smile.
Do you mean the thing you gave me? I threw that cheap stuff out.
I was taken aback.
It was in the paper bag, right? The custom-made dress shirt with my name on it were too tacky to wear.
I smiled thinly. I see. So this is what he always thought. For every birthday or anniversary, I went to the department store, picked out stylish socks or handkerchiefs, and gave them to him. But Tom always took them with a sense of entitlement, and never thanks me. Too bad. The gift in the paper bag was not from me. I'm actually looking forward to what kind of showdown this will turn into. It's time for him to pay up for all the times he's belittled me. Tom looked puzzled as I grinned at his outburst. Did you see what was inside?
What?
That was a gift from Mary. I sent you a message last night that I would leave it on the table. Didn't you read the message? Tom's face stiffened. He hurriedly pulled out his phone, checked the messages, and his face turned pale. Mary was calmly munching on cookies on the sofa, crushing the cookie in her hand, but now she stood up slowly. I mentioned the other day that I would only bring food this year. From what I saw briefly, it was a really nice shirt.
Oh no.
You came home drunk last night and hardly looked at it? Tom opened and closed his mouth, looking at Mary. Mary, with anger in her eyes, smiled sweetly.
I even attached a handwritten card. Tom, you just throw away gifts from others without a care. I'm disappointed.
Sorry, I'll pick it up right now. Wait, where is it?
Tom was rummaging through the kitchen trash when Mary's sharp voice rang out.
I took it to the collection point earlier.
Tom checked the wall clock and looked shocked. It was more than 30 minutes past the collection time. A trash pickup would have been done long ago. Tom rushed over to Mary and apologized.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't have thrown it out if I knew it was from you.
Even if it was from Laura, I think it's rather questionable to throw it away without even using it once.
Mary scolded Tom in an indignant tone. She's the type to keep things like wedding gifts out of a sense of frugality. She probably couldn't stand the thought of gifts being discarded without being used. Tom looked very lost as he completely upset his mother. Tom and Mary are usually close, so he seemed unsure of what to do in situations like this. I couldn't pass up this opportunity. As Mary started preparing to leave with an obviously displeased expression, I spoke up loudly. Mary, it can't be helped. Tom seemed really busy last night. Actually, his overtime and business trips have increased suddenly over the past year, even though his salary has not changed. I said it sarcastically, and Tom glanced at me. It was unclear if he knew I was aware of his affair, but it seemed he was trying to keep it hidden as he forced a strained smile and made lame excuses.
Yeah, that's right. It's frustrating to work for such a black company where my workload increases, but my salary stays the same. I didn't even have time to look at my phone last night.
Okay. By the way, Mary, Tom sent me this message the other day. It made me cry. I showed Mary my phone. It was the message Tom had accidentally sent to me that I had saved. Mary's eyes narrowed.
Tom, are you cheating on Laura?
What?
Tom's eyes widened in shock as Mary held out my phone to him.
What the hell is this?
That should be my line. You accidentally sent me those lovey-dovey messages with your affair partner, right? I saw the wine glasses. Were these the ones you had me order online?
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Making me as your wife buy gifts for your mistress. What kind of nerve do you have? You're disrespecting not only me but her as well.
Shut up. The shipping cost was $2.50. It's fine as long as she doesn't find out. I paid you for the items. Got a problem?
Tom was defiant, as if this was normal. So that was his reason. What a small-minded person. You're cheap but still want to cheat on me. Why did you marry me if you were going to cheat in the second year of our marriage? As I confronted him, Tom twisted his mouth into a smile.
You seemed like you'd obediently follow me. It could have been anyone.
That's awful.
But after we got married, I quickly got bored with you. Just average. I want someone who is young and cute.
Tom said this casually, leaving me speechless. You've been cheating for over 6 months, right? You started going to nightclubs because you were invited by your coworker. That's when all the sudden business trips, weekend work, and overtime started. I knew something was up.
You're so gullible. I figured if I said that, you'd believe it. I threw away all the lunches you made on those supposed work days. It'd be rude to eat your lunch on a date with her.
I was speechless. I had been getting up at 5 a.m. even on weekends to make elaborate lunches because he said me preferred homemade, and to think they were just thrown away. Looking over at Mary, she was silently frowning with her arms crossed. Feeling my blood boil, I pressed Tom even further. The business trips on the weekends were just to spend time with your mistress, right? It's no use pretending. I hired a detective agency to investigate. I pulled documents and photos from a large envelope and spread them across the dining table. In the photos, Tom and the mistress were linking arms and kissing at tourist spots even when they were entering a hotel. Everything was captured in the photos. Tom didn't expect to be photographed, grimaced, but he soon brazened it out. He searched his phone for a photo of the two of them together and shamelessly showed it to me and Mary.
Yeah, she's a stripper who's a decade younger. Look, Mom, isn't she cute?
Mary glared sharply at Tom, who was gloating. Tom, who was startled, watched as Mary knocked the phone out of his hand, his mouth gaping open.
What are you doing, Mom? You broke the screen.
Shut up.
Mary shouted at Tom with a terrifying expression, and I was astonished. It was the first time I'd ever seen Mary so angry. She looked like she might physically attack Tom at any moment. Her body trembling, Mary shouted at Tom in a high-pitched voice.
Tom, aren't you ashamed of having an affair with a younger woman? I believed you would never do such a thing.
What? But Mom, you don't like Laura either, right? Why did you get mad at me just because I had an affair?
Mary fumed.
That's completely different. Have you forgotten? Your father also had an affair with a woman who he met at a nightclub and even fathered a child. It caused a huge mess. You know how much I cried.
Tom covered his mouth and realized his mistake. I had heard about this from Tom before, so I thought Mary might take my side. My guess was right. Seizing the moment, I pulled out Tom's pay slips from a drawer and showed them to Mary along with the balance of his savings account. Come on, Mary. Don't scold him too much. Tom has been working hard, earning a decent salary. The moment I placed it on the table, Tom snatched it up and stuffed the pay slip into his pocket. Mary looked puzzled.
Wait, Tom, you are working at a major company, but your salary seems a bit low.
What? No, he works at a small to medium-sized business. Mary blinked in surprise.
What's that? Never heard of that company. Wait, when did you switch jobs?
Tom awkwardly shifted his gaze away from the pressing Mary and explained.
I quit the company I joined right after graduation after just a month. The pay was good, but the boss was too scary. Got yelled at just for oversleeping 3 times. That's okay, right? I'm working properly.
That's right, Mary. He even got promoted to a section manager. I revealed this with a smile, and Tom glared at me.
Hey, don't say unnecessary stuff.
Wait, weren't you a manager?
Well, I'll become one eventually.
Tom said that while scratching his head and laughing, which made Mary explode in anger.
Enough already.
She slammed her fist on the table and raised her voice.
Come on, Mom. Don't be scary. No need to get mad.
You cheat and lie, and you don't seem at all remorseful. What are you planning to do with your life, Tom?
I'm not planning to do anything special.
Tom, blinking rapidly, casually spoke to me.
Laura, you're not thinking of divorcing over a little affair, right? Of course, I'll continue this relationship with her. I'll keep bringing my salary home. You couldn't live without me, right?
I was beyond anger, just astounded by Tom's selfishness. Mary seemed just as speechless.
If you don't want to get divorced, Turn a blind eye to the affair and keep devoting yourself to me as you have been. I'm the one providing for you. Got it?
As Tom crossed his arms and strutted about, I just sighed. I can't live with you anymore. Let's get a divorce.
What?
I can manage just fine without you. I spread out my online banking screen and pay slips on the dining table, showing my own accounts. Mary peered over curiously.
Well, your monthly income is higher than Tom's, isn't it?
Tom turned pale.
No way. That can't be right. I made sure you switched to part-time so you'd earn less than me.
Tom stared intently at my account and his voice was trembling.
What's this $2,000 transfer? Are you doing something shady?
With my free time, I started doing computer work from home. It's finally taken off and I'm earning well. Combined with the part-time job, I make more than your monthly income, especially since your company is performing poorly and there's no bonus. I smiled icily at stunned Tom. That doesn't mean you should spend our money on your mistress, though. Looks like you've spent about $10,000, right?
Come on, that should be forgivable. Think of it as payback for all I've done for you.
Tom puffed out his chest arrogantly.
It's weird to fuss over a single affair and petty to complain about a little money spent. If you make more than me, you don't even need to work, right? I'll quit my job, and you can handle work and the housework. Just like Mom did for Dad. Devote yourself more to me.
Tom laughed heartily, but Mary gave him an icy glare.
I can't deal with this anymore, Tom. I'm cutting ties with you as a son.
What? Mom, why?
Do you think I enjoyed devoting myself to your father? I'm done with you. Whether you get a divorce or continue your affairs, do as you please.
Mary quickly packed her things and walked out the front door. With a dumbfounded look, I thrust the divorce papers at Tom. Don't mock me. Why should I have to live with you when I earn more than you? Expect a call from my lawyer tomorrow about the divorce proceedings, including the settlement for your verbal abuse and infidelity.
Hey, don't go deciding things on your own.
My things will stay here until the movers come to pick them up. If you throw anything away, I'll sue you. With that firm statement, I left the room.
Hey, you're joking, right?
Tom, with half smiled, was trying to stop me, but I silently turned my back on him and left the house. Tom was reluctant to agree to the divorce, but after being advised by his lawyer that a court case would cost him more, he reluctantly consented. Recordings of his verbal abuse on my phone served as evidence, and he was ordered to pay me compensation. Additionally, he had to reimburse over $10,000 spent from our joint savings, which apparently drained his savings. His divorce became known at his workplace because he wore his wrinkled shirts and suddenly stopped bringing lunches anymore. Moreover, a colleague who had gone to the nightclub with him blabbed about the divorce causes, exaggerating stories about Tom getting his mistress pregnant and being abusive to me, which spread through the office. The boss, who had even officiated our wedding, was furious at being embarrassed. For disrupting the company's morale, Tom's promotion was revoked, and he was transferred to a remote island. Tom is selling the house we lived in and will soon move to a remote area. According to the neighbors, Mary was fed up with Tom's dishonesty and truly cut ties with him. A friend who spotted Tom at the station recently was shocked by his pale, gaunt appearance. Having relied on me to do all the housework, Tom can't lean on his mother now, and I can imagine he's struggling mentally, sitting on pins and needles at work. The reasons for his transfer will probably reach his new subsidiary, and he'll likely be viewed with disdain. As for the mistress, she heard of his real workplace and job title from Tom's colleague, so she quickly dumped him. It is what goes around comes around. Now that I'm divorced and unburdened, and I've come to realize how much I've endured. Despite my efforts, I was never appreciated, always demanded to give more, treated like a servant. I used to think, it's shameful to divorce since we were introduced by my boss. It seems like I lack patience if I divorce quickly, or eventually our feelings will align. I had become accustomed to suppressing my own emotions. Returning to a single life, I'm relishing the fresh air for the first time in years. The urgency to get married, to have children, and the fear of facing old age alone have all lessened now that I've experienced a failed marriage. For now, I'm planning to steer clear of romantic relationships and enjoy my single life.
I sold it for $200,000. I'm off to travel abroad with Mom. We won't be home Wednesday anyway, and there's no house. Don't bother coming back.
When I returned to my parents' house, I called my husband, Tommy, who blurted out that he had sold our house. Wait a minute, what do you mean? Frantic, I got no explanation as Tommy hung up, and he wouldn't pick up my calls when I tried again. The next day, I discussed what to do next with my mom.
Don't worry, I've got it handled.
With those strong words, my mom flashed a sly grin, encouraging and puzzling me at the same time. I've got it handled. What on earth had she done? What do you mean? I asked, but my mom just muddied the waters.
You'll see.
Little did I know then, I was soon to be reunited with Tommy in a tragic state. My name is Nancy Williams. I'm currently 40 years old and have a 12-year-old daughter named Felicia who is graduating elementary school this year. I met my husband, Tommy, about 15 years ago. The connection began when Tommy, a senior colleague, transferred to my department at work. Tommy, 10 years my senior, was an impressive figure, seemingly out of reach. However, he took a liking to me, and I soon fell for him too. We started dating and quickly got married. Soon after, I discovered I was pregnant, and we were at the pinnacle of happiness. Following the birth of our daughter, I quit my job and now live happily with my family of 3 in a condo near my in-laws. Our marriage was going smoothly, but I encountered a common problem often talked about: the mother-in-law dilemma. Tommy's mom, Susie, didn't seem to think highly of me and targeted me for criticism. Interestingly, both Tommy and I were raised by single mothers, which gave us a lot in common and much to relate over. On the other hand, we had our differences. My mom always respected my decisions and stood by me. When I decided to marry Tommy, she said, "If Nancy has chosen him, I won't object. It's wonderful to be with the person you love," and she was genuinely happy for us. However, Susie was always critical from the get-go. When we announced our marriage and went to greet her, she frowned in my presence and said,
"Tommy, are you sure about her? Raised by a single mom. Couldn't you find someone more decent?"
Despite being a single mother herself, Susie belittled my family background, which left me agape. But at that moment, wanting to be liked by Susie, I kept smiling through her remarks. Encouraged by my acquiescence, Susie continued to criticize everything I did after we married.
"Your cooking is too salty. You've added too much salt. The soup lacks proper flavor, and you can't even clean properly."
Nowadays, she would often drop by unexpectedly, devour the meal I prepared for myself, criticize it, and leave. This happens about 5 times a week. No matter that we are family, dealing with Susie's attitude wears me out. Could you ask Susie to limit her visits? I've repeatedly asked Tommy for help.
Don't talk like that. She raised me by herself, and she's lonely living alone.
Yet, Tommy always defends her. It's as if he can't see things from my perspective. But just because she's lonely, why do I have to be the one constantly criticized?
Mom's like that with everyone. She's probably just taking it out on you. Try to bear with it a bit.
Tommy said, but this was no mere petulance. He heard the words at our marriage introduction and the subsequent snide remarks. Even when our daughter Felicia was born, she laughed and said, "She's got her mother's flat nose." Susie's behavior isn't something that can be dismissed as mere affection. It's too much. Please don't come to see Felicia anymore. That was the first time I spoke back when she mentioned Felicia. But Susie just laughed at my stance.
Hey, no need to get so mad. You're so red. I can't tell who's the baby here. That's what they call a silly parent.
Tommy was there at the time, but Tommy just grinned stupidly, trying to keep Susie in a good mood without saying a word. No matter what I said afterward, it was like talking to a wall. No matter how much I resisted, it didn't reach Susie. I once tried to avoid Susie's visits by pretending not to be home. But Susie, undeterred, went through Tommy and got a key to our house. Tommy was no help, and I ended up being tormented by Susie's actions, enduring days of frustration. Now, it seems like visiting our house has become part of Susie's daily routine. If it were just that, it might be bearable, but she orders me around and makes snide comments.
You're a useless daughter-in-law. Tommy must be out of his mind to choose someone like you.
When Susie said that, Tommy went quiet. As our marriage goes on, her treatment of me only gets harsher. Furthermore, despite her initial opposition, she takes out her frustrations on Tommy for not doing exactly as she says.
Today's soup is too thin again. Marrying a wife who can't even make soup. You're really a disgraced son, Tommy.
Then don't come over if you don't like it. After all, this isn't Grandma's house.
Felicia, who has never grown close to Susie, now talks back as she's older.
Not cute at all. You're just like your mom. You've been like her since you were born.
Oh, really? I'm happy to be like Mom, though.
Hearing Felicia talk back honestly feels refreshing, but because of Susie, who retorts like a child, the atmosphere at home is the worst. Eventually, Tommy started using work as an escape and stopped coming home. Then Susie would blame me for Tommy not returning. Unable to stand it any longer, I called Tommy after his work hours were over one day. "Susie's here again today. Please come home."
I'm stuck at work today. Can't do it.
"Then tell Susie to go home." Such conversations aren't new. I'm always sending SOS calls to Tommy. However, Tommy never takes my concerns about Susie seriously, and that day I was heading to his office while on the phone with him.
It's just impossible. I'm working for all of us. Deal with your own mother-in-law.
Your mother, you mean? And by the way, I'm actually on my way to your company right now. Before I could finish, he hung up. I can't believe he just hung up. I was stunned and outraged by Tommy's attitude, but as if to add insult to injury, an even more unbelievable scene unfolded.
Tommy.
It was a young woman who had just left his office and was running towards Tommy. At the sight of the woman, Tommy's face broke into a disgustingly bright smile. At that moment, my heart sank into darkness. The two of them joined up, not noticing me, and began walking away as they chatted and laughed. Startled, I tried calling Tommy several times. However, Tommy glanced at his smartphone with a grimace and shoved it back into his pocket. Then they started walking towards a quieter area. While I had a bad feeling, I desperately wanted to believe Tommy, convincing myself he must be with a work colleague. Still, a 1% doubt prevented me from approaching them, and I ended up following them. Can't be. No way. I muttered to myself as I trailed them, but the outcome was grim. As expected, the two disappeared into a hotel district. I stood frozen, watching them disappear, unable to move. Tears streamed down my face as I cried all the way home. But there was no rest at home.
You're late. What have you been doing?
Susie asked, lounging on the sofa without a care. Tommy is cheating on me, I told Susie. But Susie just laughed.
Really? Tommy has got some nerve, huh? It's fine. He'll come back here eventually.
Her words infuriated me. It's because of you, Susie. You're always here, ruining the atmosphere. That's why Tommy doesn't want to come home. Perhaps it was partly an outburst, but it was the truth. Susie, clearly angered by my words, retaliated, but I managed to force her out of the house that day and cried alone in the empty room. Fortunately, Felicia was at a tutoring session and wouldn't be back for a while. I was overwhelmed with the feeling that Susie and Tommy had destroyed my family. After that incident, Susie stayed away for a while. I lacked the courage to confront Tommy about his affair, and life just went on. I was slowly regaining some peace, but every time Tommy grinned at his phone or informed me he'd be late, I felt nauseous. Since it was summer vacation, I decided to go back to my parents' house. Felicia would be home during the break. Susie would probably come by pretending nothing was wrong. So I thought it might be better to actually be away. My parents' house is in the same county, but about a 30-minute bus ride away. I couldn't visit often, but I was concerned about my mother living alone.
It's unusual for you to stay so long. You usually only stay 2 nights. Are Tommy and Susie okay with it?
My mother knew nothing about our situation. She asked casually, but I stumbled over my words.
What's wrong?
My mother must have noticed something odd about me. She looked concerned and peered into my face. Unable to keep silent, I spilled everything about what Susie had said, how Tommy had not defended me, and about his current affair. I hadn't wanted to worry her, so I had told my mother that my relationship with Susie was good, which left her speechless, but she offered warm words of comfort.
That's how it was. You can stay here until you feel settled.
I spent about a week at my parents' house, and Felicia played a lot with my mom, seeming quite content. During that time, I heard nothing from Tommy. He must be getting along well with his affair partner. I didn't care about Tommy anymore, but I couldn't leave our house empty forever, so I thought about returning home and contacted Tommy. I'm thinking of coming back next Wednesday. Tommy, who answered the phone, didn't ask how I or Felicia were doing and casually responded to my statement.
Oh, you were planning to come back?
I couldn't hide my irritation at his tone and raised my voice. What do you mean? It sounds like you don't want me back.
No, I didn't say that, but there's no house anymore.
What? Tommy's words made me forget my anger momentarily as my thoughts froze. No house? What did he mean? As I puzzled over it, Tommy blithely continued.
I sold it for $200,000. I'm going on a trip abroad with Mom, so I won't be here Wednesday anyway. There's no house. You don't need to come back.
Wait a minute, what are you talking about?
What I mean is, it's my house, and I can do what I want with it. Well, that's it.
Tommy said this and then hung up the phone, and he wouldn't answer when I called back. The trip abroad with Susie sounded dubious, but the real issue was that he sold the house. If that was true, Susie must know about it. I called Susie to ask about the house and the trip in detail.
A trip abroad? Oh, Tommy did mention something about that.
Are you really going with him? It's not with his affair partner?
I don't know. After all, you're the one who went back to your parents, leaving Tommy behind. And as for the house, it's your fault for leaving your home empty, being a housewife and all. Tommy said it, didn't he? That condo is Tommy's, so it's not your place to say anything.
Talking to Susie yielded nothing, but from her tone, it was likely the trip was with his affair partner.
You are.
Susie, having not been able to rant at me for a few days, seemed to have built up stress, and despite being on the phone, she kept complaining. I let her words go in one ear and out the other, sighed, and hung up the phone after our conversation. Upon hearing this, my mother turned pale.
That's too much.
She was visibly angry about Susie and Tommy's actions. So, I guess I'll stay here a little longer.
Of course.
It was fortunate that Felicia and I had our basic needs met, but I couldn't stay silent about Tommy selling our house. There was no way I could forgive Tommy for what he did. The next day, I discussed with my mother what I should do. I can't forgive him. I want him to regret everything he's done and reflect on it. My mother listened silently to my furious tale, then smiled mischievously.
You don't need to worry about anything, Nancy.
But I can't stand the thought of him living happily with Susie or his affair partner.
Calm down. It's okay. I've taken action. There's no way they can be happy after what they've done to you.
Her strong words encouraged me, but they also left me puzzled. In saying she took action, what could she have done? What do you mean? I asked, but my mother's response was vague.
You'll see.
2 weeks passed. Felicia and I were still living comfortably at my parents' home. Felicia seemed to really enjoy her time with her beloved grandmother, following her around every day. I worried that her last summer vacation before finishing elementary school might feel constrained, but it didn't seem to be the case. That evening, while the three of us were having dinner, my phone rang. It's an unknown number. Suspicious, I answered the call on the spot. Hello? The police. I blurted out in surprise, drawing the attention of my mother and Felicia. Without minding their gazes, the caller, who identified themselves as a police officer, explained the situation methodically.
Your husband has been found sleeping in the park, causing a disturbance to the neighbors, and he is currently being held at the police station. Could you come to pick him up?
I'll come right away. I responded and hung up. Both my mother and Felicia looked at me with wide eyes, wondering what had happened. I explained the call from the police. I have to go there now. With that, I rushed out of my parents' home. Upon arriving at the police station, I was immediately led to a room. There sat Tommy, unshaven, looking dejected, his clothes dirty, with a carry-on and an unknown woman beside him. I couldn't believe that the disheveled man being held by the police was my husband. I almost thought I was in the wrong room. Tommy looked up vacantly, and as soon as he saw me, his eyes filled with a sudden intensity, and he stood up.
What have you done, you fool?
Huh? His sudden outburst took me by surprise. To think he would speak to me like that after I came all this way when he called. Irritated, I retorted, "Who do you think you are? Causing trouble for people. What have you done? That should be my line."
Huh? Don't mess with me. You manipulated the realtor. What are you going to do about me and Kristen's place to stay?
Kristen. That must be the name of his affair partner. The unfamiliar woman remained silent, looking down. But more puzzling were Tommy's words, which left me tilting my head in confusion. A police officer calmed the agitated Tommy, giving me a moment to think. Then I remembered what my mother had said about taking care of it. In fact, my mother owned multiple properties. She became a single mother after my father passed away, who was the son of a landlord. Thus, she inherited the real estate in my father's name. Currently, these properties are transformed into apartments and are rented out. She has had a long-standing relationship with the realtors and is well known in the local real estate market.
You said he sold his home, right? I assumed it was hard to think about living with Susie, so he must be renting a new place. I just checked if Tommy had signed a recent lease on one of our properties.
I stepped out of the room where Tommy and the others were to call my mother, and she nonchalantly explained.
And it turned out he was there. Since he comes with issues, I told them, I won't rent my property to this guy. Then, other property owners caught wind of it and refused to rent to him too.
I couldn't help but laugh a little, lured by my mother's laughter. Piecing the story together, Tommy had sold our house, intending to live with Kristen, and searched for a place through a realtor. Coincidentally, the apartment they initially got was owned by my mother. Feeling secure about finding a new home, they went on a trip abroad, during which my mother refused to rent it out. The realtor tried to contact Tommy, but couldn't reach him because he was still traveling. Meanwhile, my mother, known among landlords for being exceptionally accommodating, had made it known she wouldn't rent to Tommy. No one wanted to rent to such a person. After returning, Tommy immediately started looking for another property he could rent from a real estate agent, but it seems no one came forward to rent him a house. Upon returning from the trip, Tommy found that he had no home to return to, and according to the police, he had run out of funds, maxed out his cards. Kristen had terminated her apartment lease as well, leaving them homeless and resorting to sleeping in a park until they were reported.
Anyway, as the person responsible for him, we need to proceed with.
The police thought I had come to pick up Tommy. What? I just came because I was called. I have no intention of being the person responsible for him.
What?
Let them sleep outside together, I said, laughing. Presumptuously, Kristen, hoping I would take responsibility, looked up at me despairingly upon hearing my words. Tommy tried to lunge at me in anger, but was stopped by the police. Yuck, you're dirty. You haven't showered in a while, have you? Don't come near me. I deliberately said that, then turned my gaze to Kristen. She was not particularly beautiful, just an ordinary-looking girl. Now filthy and disheveled, she was probably in her early 20s. She sulked in silence, merely hanging her head. Kristen, was it? She flinched when I addressed her.
Yes.
Why don't you call your parents to pick you up? That is, if you can tell them you went on an affair trip with a married man. Kristen couldn't respond to my words and just started crying profusely. And Tommy, you should have her parents take responsibility for you, though you might be older than her.
What?
Well, I don't think age matters in love, as long as it's true love. Tommy tried to retort, but ended up silent, unable to say anything. What was he thinking, messing around with someone so much younger? Seemingly realizing the shame of his actions, he bit his lip in frustration. Well then, see you.
Wait, please.
Tommy called out loudly, trying to stop me as I began to leave. But I had no obligation to wait. I didn't even look back as I left the police station. The next day, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. Felicia and my mom had gone out shopping, so I answered the door, and to my surprise, it was Susie. Perhaps she took the bus all the way here just to complain to me. True to my expectations, Susie began speaking with her usual nasty expression.
This failure. You didn't even pick up your own husband. What are you doing? You're terrible.
She probably heard about me refusing to take responsibility yesterday. Apparently, Susie had picked him up this morning. Thinking he might have spent the night at the police station, I chuckled, which made Susie turn red with anger.
What are you laughing at? This isn't funny.
However, a question popped into my mind. I mean, you could have just let Tommy and Kristen stay at your place, Susie. It's terrible to blame me without doing what you could yourself.
I wasn't there.
Not there? I asked back, and Susie laughed as if boasting.
Tommy gifted me a spa trip. It was for 5 nights and 6 days. I just got back yesterday. It's a shame such a kind son ended up with you as his wife.
I didn't know when Tommy had gone overseas or how long he had been in the park. But while Tommy was out sleeping in parks, Susie was comfortably enjoying a spa. Though she didn't know it was happening, she wasn't in any position to blame others. Susie was gifted a spa trip by Tommy? That's nice for you. I was forced to retreat to my parents' house because Tommy sold our house without my consent. Who should really be helping Tommy? As I smiled sweetly at her, Susie looked at me as if she'd seen something disgusting and began muttering complaints and excuses.
Anyway, to do such a thing to your own husband, you and your mother will get what's coming to you. That's why no good comes from single mothers and their children.
Enraged, Susie said this in desperation and then left. Was she referring to herself and Tommy as single mothers and their children? Thinking this, I watched Susie hurriedly walk away. A few hours later, Tommy contacted me. Wondering what it was this time, I answered the phone with a sense of dread.
Mom fell and broke her bone on her way back from your house, and now she's hospitalized.
Tommy seemed quite panicked. She said we'd get our comeuppance and broke her bone on her way home. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. I've never seen such a perfect boomerang.
What's so funny? Anyway, it's serious, so come back home.
Back to where? I don't have a home, remember?
You can come to my parents' house.
Tommy said it as if it was the most natural thing, but why would he think I'd agree to that? No thanks. Why don't you ask Kristen? I told him, but Tommy's response was sluggish. Probably even Kristen had rejected him. Oh, so your beloved Kristen can't even take care of Susie for you? Well, it's Susie after all. No surprise there. Then you should take care of your mother yourself. On the other end of the phone, Tommy seemed utterly devastated.
Don't say that. We're family, aren't we?
Now he starts talking about family. Perhaps Kristen had dumped him. But that doesn't mean I'm obliged to help. I scoffed at his words and responded, I can't consider someone who wouldn't help me as family, so I won't help either. After that, I told Tommy I wanted a divorce. I thought the process would go smoothly, but surprisingly, Susie opposed our divorce.
If marrying such a woman means breaking up with you, you're better. I won't allow a divorce. Just come back home and I'll forgive you.
She must have been talking about Kristen. Susie had probably realized that Kristen wouldn't be able to fulfill her expectation of a daughter-in-law taking care of her in-laws. Of course, I had no intention of doing that either. And it turned out that Tommy really had broken up with Kristen, so Susie's worries were unfounded. Probably Tommy was the one who got dumped. Kristen must have realized she couldn't be happy with someone like Tommy. But I'm not about to let someone who went after my husband get off scot-free. Of course, I'm going to demand a hefty alimony. For the young Kristen, it would be a large amount, but I demanded $20,000.
I can't pay that kind of money. We broke up, isn't that enough?
I went to talk to her with a lawyer. She turned pale and whispered weakly. She seemed so timid, it made me wonder why she'd go after someone else's husband. But no matter her personality, I was not going to forgive Kristen. Being cheated on, I was so devastated I wished I could just disappear. But it wasn't just that. While you were having a great time with Tommy, I was suffering from the stress given by Tommy's mother.
But
You not only stole Tommy, but also our family time. I know Tommy is to blame, but if you had a bit more common sense and moral standards, this wouldn't have happened. Kristen was crying when she heard those words. However, her tears seemed less about remorse and more about her anxiety over what happens next. Indeed, she hadn't offered a sincere apology, just repeating, but, looking for a way out. It seems Kristen came from a rural area, and her father is known to be strict. With no home to return to, I think she should go back to the countryside and be reprimanded by her stern father. I've also demanded alimony from Tommy. First, as part of the property settlement, the money from the house sale is to be split. Out of the $200,000, $100,000 should be mine. Tommy's share is also $100,000, of which he has already squandered $20,000 on extravagant travel, leaving him with $80,000. I've decided to have him pay $30,000 as alimony and $50,000 as child support in a lump sum. I chose a lump sum payment for the child support because I wanted to limit any further interactions with Tommy. Tommy has apparently squandered his savings on Kristen, leaving him penniless. During our last conversation, Tommy apologized profusely to me.
I'm really sorry. Let's start over. If that's not possible, at least forgive the alimony or reduce the child support.
While he expresses his apologies, like Kristen, he seemed more self-pitying than remorseful, which made me sigh. Are you kidding? If you understood how much pain I went through, you wouldn't dare ask for alimony forgiveness.
That's well.
And Felicia is about to enter high school and college, and $50,000 is hardly enough. But I've already reduced the amount because you can't afford to pay more. You should be thankful for that. Tommy was speechless, finally understanding just how pathetic a father and husband he had been.
Can I see Felicia anymore?
As he spoke, tears messed up his face. You shouldn't. It's not for me to say, but Felicia doesn't want to.
That's...
Even putting aside the affair, if you had been a wonderful father, Felicia wouldn't feel this way. But you never stood up for Felicia and me against Susie's complaints. Contrasting my laughter, Tommy looked utterly defeated. I remembered what Felicia had said.
Dad is not only useless, but he's making Mom suffer. So just get a divorce already.
Actually, it was Felicia who had suggested the divorce. If I had children, I might have hesitated to divorce, but it was Felicia's words that made me decide. I have a real family with my mother and Felicia, and I felt that was all I needed. When I shared this, Tommy turned pale and just cried silently. Even if he thought his actions were minor, they had a major impact on others. I hope he lives his life, never forgetting the pain he caused and reflecting on his actions. Tommy, having no money to rent a house, started living with Susie in his parents' house. Susie required care due to complications from her fracture, so Tommy worked reduced hours to care for her. Their income drastically decreased, and they had to live a poor life, needing a helper when Tommy was away. Originally, Susie tried to rely on me, and Tommy tried to push her onto me. He probably intended to make me take care of Susie as well. Fortunately, I managed to escape that situation. I imagine caring for Susie with her difficult personality is tough, but that's Tommy's responsibility. I don't know how many decades of caregiving lie ahead, but Tommy has no choice but to do his best. As for Kristen, after impulsively canceling her lease and being unable to pay alimony, she consulted her parents. I received an apology and alimony payment from Kristen's parents, and it seems she has returned to the countryside. Consequently, she resigned from her job. The job she loved, the independent life she longed for, and all her savings, Kristen lost everything. I don't know what she is doing now, but I think she is living under strict parental supervision at her parents' house, feeling restricted. As for myself, I continue to live in my parents' home. Although it was a bit far, Felicia attended her original elementary school until graduation. She then enrolled in the middle school I attended. Seeing my daughter in the same uniform I wore, my mother tearfully expressed her joy. My mother always silently wished for my happiness, and although she never spoke about her feelings, I realized after living together that she must have felt lonely at times. From now on, I plan to do my best to show filial piety and make our family of 3 happy. Most importantly, I want to ensure that my mother and Felicia have a happy life.
You know, Lisa is really lucky to have such a gorgeous mom. My daughter looks like my wife. What a poor girl.
My husband always putting me and our daughter down. He keeps going on about how cute his niece are all the time. But the most disappointing one here is you. Seriously, you need to get a clue. My name's Marie. I'm in my late 40s and a working mother. My daughter's name is Serena. She is a middle school student and is busy studying every day. Scott, my husband, is a middle-aged office worker. He always comes home from work as a middle manager and starts venting about how tough it is. I can tolerate him venting about work stress, but that's not all. Seems like he likes staking out his frustrations on his own family. Anyway, Scott openly insults me and our daughter. He complained almost every day that my cooking was bad. He even criticized every meal. Even though he finished every meal, he still complained afterward, saying the house isn't clean enough. He'd run his finger along the windowsills, saying, "There's still dust here. Do it again." Feels like he's straight out of some old drama. And to top it off, he'd say things like, "You're just a lousy wife no matter what you do." He complains even about the way I polish glasses, so it's getting really tiresome. But it doesn't stop there. He treated our daughter just as badly. Despite being his own daughter, he finds fault in everything she does. Once she's in middle school, she's supposed to be conscious of her appearance. But even if she changes just one hairstyle, he says, "That doesn't suit you." And if she decides on a club activity, he says, "Quit that pointless club." Even if she got good test grades, he criticized her, saying, "What are these grades? You should try harder." He never praises her. When Scott starts stalking, family time becomes the worst time. Both my daughter and I were getting fed up with Scott's behavior. One day, we decided to visit my in-laws during the long weekend. Scott's brother and his family live with my in-laws, so we didn't go often. Rick, my brother-in-law, is kind and a really good person. His daughter Lisa is in the same grade as Serena, and she's also a very nice girl. Serena and Lisa are very close friends, but there are problems in this household too. Alice, my brother-in-law's wife, is so beautiful that she could be a model. I wondered why Alice, such a beautiful woman, married Rick, who had the same normal face as Scott. But she's quite stubborn, a bit too much. She often made remarks that belittle me.
Marie, you know your makeup skills are so poor, aren't they? Oh, sorry. Is it because no matter how hard you try, you still look shabby? I often get complimented for looking beautiful even without makeup.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, the least harmful level.
Lost some weight again? No matter what I eat, I just can't seem to gain any. Marie has got a big-sized figure. What on earth does she eat to look like that? I was walking in the downtown area when someone asked me if I wanted to be a model. It's such a hassle to turn down these offers. Marie seems to never have to deal with that, which I envy. The other day, when I was walking with my daughter, someone mistook us for sisters. It was so embarrassing. But Marie always looks like a mom, doesn't she?
She effortlessly throws insults as if exhaling. Alice is truly beautiful, with a stunning figure. I'll give her that. Her stories are probably true. But seriously, does she need to put me down every time? Every time, Rick gets mad and says, "What are you saying? That's rude," but it's like talking to a brick wall. Alice giggled. Well, because it's true. Well, I can tolerate that much, or even just laugh it off. But sometimes there's a chemical reaction. Mix it the wrong way, and Scott switch flips.
Well, you know, Alice, my wife really lacks charm.
You are old too. Your hair looks like a QR code. Alice's daughter, Lisa, also perfectly inherits Alice's genes and is quite a beauty. She's in the same grade as my daughter, Serena, but she seems very mature, almost like a high school or college student. Stylish and beautiful, Serena really adores Lisa. While Lisa resembles Alice in appearance, fortunately, she takes after Rick in terms of personality. She is very kind and caring without looking down on anyone. My daughter always says with sparkling eyes, being beautiful with a good personality is the ultimate power. Her favorite cousin was also her dream. Thanks to that, Serena has become quite refined. Though she doesn't wear makeup, she's become stylish enough with her hair and attire without violating school rules. She spends at least 30 minutes in front of the mirror before heading to school. That stopped her from sleeping in. My in-laws are good people, and going to their house where my in-laws, Rick and Lisa, live is not unpleasant. However, Alice and my husband's attitude alone bothers me. Neither Rick nor I can get through to them. I wonder if there's a good way to reform these two with sharp tongues. Before I could come up with any good ideas, this visit to my in-laws happened.
Oh, Marie, you seem to have aged again. You have more wrinkles than I do. If we walk together, people might think I'm younger than you.
Within 3 minutes of opening the door to my in-laws' house, Alice fired off her first self-aggrandizing and disparaging remark towards me. It looks like this visit will be a dreary one again.
Marie, are you taking care of your skin properly? Don't be stingy with moisturizer. When I went to the cosmetics counter, the clerk said that I had perfect skin.
Well, is it going to be like this again today? I'm starting to feel fed up. I shifted my attention to my daughter. Serena and Lisa were studying together, spreading their reference books. They won't be able to see each other when they get busy with studies and club activities. Since we'll probably skip both summer vacation and Christmas holidays, they will see each other next time when they're high school students. Understanding this, Serena decided to come with me today. Without being too intrusive, I peeked at their notebooks, revealing an array of incomprehensible numbers. I managed to teach them until they were in elementary school, but the study of middle school was beyond my understanding. Did I really study this stuff? It's like a whole different world. It seems Serena is teaching Lisa. Come to think of it, my daughter was good at math. As I watched, Lisa, with her cute, sparkling eyes, looked at Serena.
Wow, Serena's way of teaching is so easy to understand. I'm not good at math, but it's probably the first time I've really understood it. Serena's better at teaching than the teacher.
Raised by her favorite person, Serena didn't seem entirely displeased. Blushing with happiness, she replied, "It's nothing like that." But someone wasn't amused. Then Alice stepped in.
Well, it's no surprise that a plain-looking girl is good at plain old studying.
There was one person who nodded at the words. Unfortunately, that included my husband.
Yeah, that's right. Serena may look unfortunate, but at least she's good at studying. You are hopeless.
Yeah. Is Serena even related to Lisa? Well, Lisa's cuteness must come from me. It's impossible for you to have a cute child, considering your mother is not exactly a beauty.
Hey, cut it out.
Just as Scott and Alice were getting carried away, Rick showed up. Despite his angry face, Scott and Alice were unfazed. In fact, Scott casually took out his wallet and handed $50 to Lisa.
Lisa is really beautiful, isn't she? She's definitely a winner in life. No doubt about it. Such a girl deserves a little pocket money from her uncle and Serena, who are modest and have a good personality. Why don't you make a little effort to dress up instead of just studying all the time? Well, I guess it's impossible considering your origins. After all, your mother has also made futile efforts.
Serena's eyes welled up with tears as her aunt and father said terribly harsh things to her. However, Scott continued to repeatedly exclaim, "Lisa is adorable," without paying any attention to that.
Lisa is really lucky to have a beautiful mother. Serena, having a mother like that must be the worst. Lisa is as happy as Alice. Serena ended up like Marie. What a poor girl.
Stop it, Dad. Serena's eyes pleaded. Unable to voice her thoughts, Serena's tear-filled eyes sent out an SOS. But Scott continued to ignore it, continuing to praise Lisa and belittle Serena along with Alice. That's enough. At that moment, I unexpectedly raised my voice loudly. Having reached the limit of tolerating Serena's tears, I silently took Serena's hand and left the in-law's house. I'm so angry. I'm boiling with rage. I won't forgive them absolutely. We usually stay overnight at the in-law's house, but with something like this happening, there's no way we would stay. As soon as we got home, there were consecutive calls from my mother-in-law, Adele, and Rick. The two of them kept apologizing profusely. But it's not the fault of the in-laws or Rick. The in-laws seemed hesitant to say anything directly to Alice's face, but it looked like they were saying something to their own son, Scott, probably giving him a lecture. Yet, Scott just grinned away. While Alice is certainly infuriating, I think that's something Rick should handle. But Scott is different. Without even bothering to chase after us when we returned home, he just stayed overnight at his parents' house. Serena and I talked it over and made a decision. The night after the incident at the in-laws, Scott finally came back. "I'm home," he said casually, walking into the house. Of course, I didn't say welcome back. Silence was my response. As expected, Scott was grinning. With that grin still on his face, he peeked into the living room and glanced around.
Is Serena in her room?
Serena isn't here, I replied, then checked the clock and frowned.
She's still not back. It's already 10 at night. Even if she had tutoring, it's too late.
In response to Scott's words, I deliberately let out a loud sigh and stood up from the sofa. While heading towards the fridge, I told Scott, she's not here anymore.
What?
Scott tilted his head, unable to understand what I was saying. While confirming that in the corner of my vision, I opened a can of beer. A crisp sound echoed through the room as I popped it open.
What do you mean she's not here? Did she go to a friend's house to sleep over?
It means exactly what it sounds like. She's no longer in this house.
What do you mean? I have no idea what you're talking about.
She said she doesn't need a despicable father like you and left.
Left to where?
Well, I wouldn't know about that.
Why are you so calm about this? And you call yourself a mother?
Unfortunately, I am a pity mother.
You've got to be kidding me. Who would take that seriously?
I'm telling you, it's not a joke. Unable to contain myself, I slammed the can down into the sink. A loud, dull sound echoed. I glared at Scott. Jokes are supposed to be funny for everyone.
What? Seriously, Madover?
Your jokes aren't funny at all. You and Alice might have been laughing, but no one else was. How is that a joke when not a single other person found it amusing?
That's because you end.
Making your daughter cry with your so-called jokes. What kind of joke is that?
I just thought, she might get motivated from it.
No child would ever be motivated by that.
But,
Shut up. Your actions have been more than enough for our daughter to abandon you.
Abandon me. Serena abandoned me.
That's why she ran away from home, isn't it?
Is that so?
Doesn't he understand that if he doesn't stop here, he'll do something irreversible? It's pathetic. With a pale face, Scott grabbed my arm, but I coldly brushed him off.
What should I do?
How should I know?
Do you think she'll forgive me if I apologize?
After all the things you've done to Serena over the past dozen years, it won't be that easy. My words seemed to strike a chord with him. Scott was speechless, and then, I'll go look for her outside, he said and rushed out. He does worry when his daughter goes missing. How disappointing after saying it was useless and no good. But it's too late now. After seeing Scott off, I returned to the room and picked up my bag. It was so heavy it seemed like I was going on a trip, even though I sent most of them by parcel delivery during the day. I only kept what seemed immediately necessary at hand, but it's still quite a lot. I lifted the bag with a grunt and left the house. Confirming that Scott wasn't around, I stepped out onto the main street and hailed a taxi. The destination was...
What's going on? Why isn't your luggage here?
The first thing Scott said when he called. His voice was loud enough to be heard even with the phone far from my ear. After letting Scott's voice fade away, I put the phone back to my ear and said, "Well, since I moved them out, obviously they're not here."
Moved them out? Where on earth to?
It was another loud voice, so I moved the phone away from my ear again. Feeling annoyed, I decided to switch to speakerphone. I placed the phone on the table, took a sip of tea, and then said, "I don't think it's necessary to tell you where I'm going. Anyway, I'm leaving too, so good luck living on your own."
No way. Are you kidding me? Do you think you'll be forgiven for doing something like this?
You must be happy now that your disappointing wife is gone.
You're really persistent. That's why I said it was a joke.
He's still calling it a joke. Just as I was about to raise my voice to Scott, who seemed completely unrepentant.
Dad, your jokes aren't funny at all. You can't hurt your daughter and expect laughter to come out of it.
Serena shouted from the side. Scott was taken aback. In a panicked voice, he yelled, "Serena, wait, are you with Mom?"
Yeah, Mom and I are at Grandpa and Grandma's house.
Grandpa and Grandma. Wait, at Marie's parents' house?
Yes, that's exactly it. Serena and I are at my parents' house in the neighboring ward. Got it. I'll come pick you up now. Let's all talk together then, Scott said and hung up the phone. Fine by me, but I wonder if he's prepared to have a discussion. I turned around and thought so. After about 10 minutes, Scott arrived by car, and he was speechless.
Why is everyone gathered here?
It's no wonder Scott was surprised. After all, at my parents' house, not only my parents, but also my in-laws, Rick, and even Alice and Lisa were present. It's not often that we all gather together outside of major events like weddings or funerals. Seeing this unusual gathering, Scott was left speechless. With a smile, I gestured for him to sit down. Well, take a seat over here. In the center of the circle formed by me, my parents, Rick, my in-laws, Serena, and Lisa.
Here?
Yes, right there. With an inscrutable smile, I gave him a pointed look, and Scott sat down with a tense expression. By the way, Alice is sitting alone outside of this circle. Now then, do you have anything to say?
I didn't do anything wrong.
Is that all you have to say? Making jokes like that? As I pinched his cheek lightly, he winced. Ouch. Rubbing his reddened cheek, Scott spoke up.
Because it was just a joke.
So you think it's okay to crack jokes like that? Scott's attitude was too much for me to handle, so I passed the baton. Then my parents chimed in.
Scott, what do you think a family is? As the head of the household, shouldn't you be protecting your family?
I do protect them.
Is ridiculing Marie and Serena the way you protect them? Do you even care about Serena?
Of course. I overflow with love for her.
Is overflowing with love criticizing her every day, comparing her to other kids, and calling her a disappointment?
Scott was left speechless under the glare of my father. Then my in-law spoke up.
What a fool of a son.
What?
Scott was taken aback by the unexpected words from his own parents. The criticism from my in-laws didn't stop.
It seems like our way of raising him was completely wrong. How else could he have turned out like this?
But Adele, Rick turned out fine. Isn't it more appropriate to think that his character is just rotten?
That's right, honey. This kid has always had a tendency to look down on others. We've constantly warned him and even lectured him, but he never listens. I wonder who he takes after. He's truly a disappointing son.
What? You don't have to go that far.
Someone who called his own wife and daughter disappointing has no right to say he's not disappointing. You have no idea how awful it feels until it's said to you. You're just so disappointing in every way.
I'm sorry.
We're not the ones you should be apologizing to.
Yes. Serena, Marie, I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Finally, Scott apologized to me and Serena. Well, I have no intention of forgiving him. But especially after what he said to Serena, I'll never forgive him. I glanced at Serena, and she had a perfect poker face. I couldn't help but smirk at how his apology didn't seem to affect her at all. Scott seemed to notice too.
Serena, I was wrong too.
I was wrong too. What's that supposed to mean?
Finally speaking up, Serena's voice was low. Scott's face turned pale.
So, Dad thinks I'm at fault too. Ultimately, it's because I'm a disappointing daughter, right?
Well,
You think Lisa and Auntie Alice are better than me and my mom, right?
That's not.
So, we're just disappointing wife and daughter, aren't we?
Well,
I feel the same way about having a father like you. We don't need a disappointing father anymore. It's annoying. You should live with Lisa and Auntie Alice.
well, I don't think.
Scott panicked, and then Lisa spoke up.
I don't want to live with such a disappointing uncle either.
Scott was taken aback by Lisa's unexpected comment, but Lisa didn't stop.
Saying awful things about his wife and daughter while favoring his niece. It's unthinkable to call your own family disappointing. You're truly a disappointing uncle.
I'm sorry.
We don't need such a disappointing apology. I hate both Mom and Uncle. I don't even want to see your faces.
Surprised by Lisa's words, Alice's head shot up.
Do you hate Mom too?
Mom, you always make excuses and refuse to admit your mistakes when Dad lectures you. You don't seem to think you're at fault at all. Both you and Uncle are the worst for speaking ill of others. Do you really think you're such good people that you can criticize others? It's not just about being spiritually poor. In my opinion, both of you are the lowest of the low, the worst, and beyond disappointing.
Alice slumped at those words. And Scott, too, dropped his shoulders when Serena said, I hate Dad, too. Well, that's all. I said as a conclusion, Serena and I will continue living at our parents' house. It seems we don't have to transfer schools, and it's convenient to take the bus. So there's no problem.
You're not coming back until high school?
Not until high school starts.
Are you getting a divorce?
Who knows? It's up to you from now on. Being abandoned by the family was probably not something Scott had anticipated. Scott hung his head, his face pale with shock. Later, Rick apparently gave Alice a stern talking to. Fed up with Alice's behavior up to now, they decided to live separately. In other words, they kicked Alice out of the family home. Since Alice's real parents are already deceased, she has nowhere to go back to and will have to live on her own from now on. Alice seems to be quite shocked, but I don't think people like her can change. It will probably end in divorce. Lisa seems to be quite happy about her mother leaving. Lisa smiled and said to Serena, let's continue to get along well. They hugged each other. As for Scott, for a while, there were daily apology calls and messages. But when I said it's annoying, he stopped voluntarily. Even though he never listened to anything I said before, he shouldn't think he'll be forgiven just because he finally listens now. He's been faithfully paying living expenses and child support, so he better show some sincerity from now on. However, it's doubtful whether he'll be able to attend his daughter's wedding. As for Serena, she's relieved to be free from her father's harsh words and is enjoying her days. I'm happy to see her smile more often. My work is going well and I am living a fulfilling life. It looks like I won't need Scott's support for my living expenses from now on. I smirk when I think about the future.
I was in the midst of preparing to move, as our brand new house had just been completed. It was on a day when I got off work early, so I decided to stop by the new place before heading home. To my surprise, I found my unemployed husband, who was supposed to be out job hunting, in the throes of an affair with another woman.
How about kicking her out and living here together?
Really? I'm so happy. But how do you plan to kick out your wife?
I was dumbstruck by the turn of events. However, I wasn't about to let things go their way. I switched gears and called over my husband's relatives. This is the new house. I introduced them to the scene where my husband was caught in a semi-nude embrace with his mistress, but frozen as they saw us. My father-in-law was furious. After a chase ensued with my husband trying to escape, he took an unbelievable action, leading to an unexpected conclusion. Ever since I was young, owning my dream home was my goal. I started saving from my part-time job earnings during my student days, working tirelessly to make this dream a reality. Even after landing a job post-college, I was all about work, putting romance on the back burner. Around the time I turned 30, I met my husband, who also dreamed of owning our own home. We hit it off and agreeing if we work together, we can make our dream come true sooner. We dated for about a year before getting married. Initially, we lived in a rented apartment, but after 5 years, the time to realize our dream had finally arrived. As I grew older, my vague childhood dream of homeownership developed into a vision with specific ideals. My grandparents and parents had always lived in rentals. While it wasn't too inconvenient, the need for permission for everything was a hassle. My parents seemed okay with it, saying, "Home is where you make it," but the longer I lived in rentals, the more I wanted to improve things. I became convinced that owning a home was the only way to have the freedom to renovate as I wished. When I shared these thoughts and preferences with the home builder, they suggested, "Wouldn't you prefer to have someone from your own generation, perhaps a woman, as your contact?" And that's how we were introduced to our current representative. She was beautiful, even in my eyes, but humble and a great listener, answering my questions clearly and precisely. I felt very comfortable and trusted her completely. However, my husband often praised her excessively, to the point where it was off-putting. My suspicion towards his behavior grew as his praises became more frequent. The woman, however, seemed to tactfully ignore my husband's over-the-top compliments, which made me feel almost guilty. Ultimately, incorporating all our ideals led to significantly exceeding our initial budget. The monthly mortgage payments were going to be high. While compromising was an option, I thought it better to earn more rather than settle and later regret. I earned more than my husband, and most of our ideals were mine, so I decided to bear the extra costs, especially since a promotion was on the horizon, ensuring an increase in my income. Given the promotion was on the table, it was a sure thing that my income would increase. I didn't mind going over budget and asked them to proceed as planned. When we decided to get married, we discussed and set our priorities as a couple. Top of the list was owning our dream home. We agreed to compromise as little as possible to get a house close to both our ideals. We both wanted to work until the mortgage was fully paid off. And as for kids, which naturally becomes a topic of concern once you tie the knot, we decided to discuss it if either of us felt the desire for them. Essentially, we were open to a child-free marriage. That's why I didn't mind allocating most of our earnings towards our home. However, the rules we set would eventually break down. After my promotion was confirmed, I threw myself into work even more. I had fewer days off due to handing over responsibilities to my subordinates, and sometimes even working on weekends to keep up. My husband finishes work on time, with no overtime or work on holidays. He had quite a bit of free time. Therefore, he started handling more of the new home details. While we usually met with our sales rep at her office as the completion of our new home neared, she began visiting our current home frequently under the guise of meetings. "Did you have another meeting with the sales rep at our house today? Why can't you go to their company instead?" I asked him more about, "What did you talk about?" and is everything going smoothly? He would vaguely reply, just some details and stuff, unwilling to share more. I wanted to ask my husband, what do you mean by various things? Tell me about these various things. But since I had been too busy and had left everything about our new home to him, I felt a sense of guilt for leaving it all up to him and couldn't pursue the matter deeply. The reason was, he said, if you're that concerned, then you take responsibility. If he had just left it at that, it would have been over. However, as I kept silent out of fear, eventually, an unexpected situation occurred. Without consulting me, my husband quit his job. One day, when the completion of our dream home was just around the corner, I asked my husband, he was still lounging around at home when it was time for me to leave for work, "Are you sure you're okay with the time?"
Work. I quit. It's inconvenient to commute from our new place, and with your salary increase, we can manage for now, right?
He didn't even seem to feel guilty, insisting he was right with a smirk on his face. Inconvenient to commute? We thoroughly considered that when choosing the location. Remember, you were the one who said it was fine that only local trains stopped there and that a bit of a walk to the station was good for our health. When he responded with, "Did I say that?" I snapped and yelled back, "Enough already." We had gone over budget, counting on his income as well. After all, we were supposed to work together to afford our dream home. Why has it suddenly become just my income? Even if you decided to quit, I wish you had talked to me about it first. After I had finished saying everything I wanted to say, driven by my emotions, my husband asked, "Is it really something to get so angry about?" showing that he completely failed to grasp the seriousness of the matter. Seeing that my anger hadn't subsided, my husband promised, "I'll find a new job within 2 months after we move." So I made him swear to keep his promise, and with that, the matter was concluded. However, far from disappearing, my mistrust only grew more and more. In the meantime, our long-awaited new home was completed. I had a penchant for custom-made and imported furniture, so we decided to move in only after everything was set up. My husband said he wanted to find a job with an easy commute from our new home and was seen walking to the nearest station now and then. But finding a new job for him was not going as planned. He spent his weekdays at the job center and was hardly at home. Seeing my husband's demeanor, I believed he was doing his best to look for a job in his own way. Rather than pushing him into a short-lived job, I figured it would be better to aim for a position where he could work until retirement. I decided to be a bit more patient and see how things would pan out, keeping the promise in mind. On one of those days, as usual, I found myself having to work on what was supposed to be my day off. As I was hurriedly getting ready, my husband said, "I'll take care of the chores." Grateful, I thanked him and left for work. I was concerned because he insisted on hurrying, but thanks to my husband taking over all the hectic morning chores, I was able to leave for work with time to spare. Because of this, I unusually managed to finish my work just after noon. I thought about just going home and resting, but my husband, who took over the chores, was probably relaxing then, and I didn't want to disturb him. So I decided to put it off and went to our new place to pick out the curtains that we had been delaying. As I hadn't measured some of the smaller windows yet, my husband had already shared his relaxing experiences at the new place, which I had yet to enjoy myself. Thinking it might be nice to have a late lunch there, I bought some snacks at the station and arrived at the new home. As I tried to unlock the door, I found it strangely unlocked. What does this mean? My anxiety grew. I considered calling the police, but then remembered I had installed something recently. After noticing signs of someone entering our new home before, my brand new dresser, which my husband wasn't supposed to use, was dirty. Knowing that my husband had occasionally been to our new place, I asked him about it, but he said he never brought anyone over. So assuming it might be thieves scouting the place or a hangout spot for troublemakers, I had installed a surveillance camera for evidence in case of an incident. Whether it's thieves or troublemakers, I realized I couldn't handle it alone, so I thought it would be best to have evidence to show the police in case something happened. With trembling hands, I took a deep breath to calm myself. After taking a moment to regain composure, I held my phone again and checked the camera footage. To my shock, it wasn't a thief or troublemakers, but my husband in the midst of a passionate affair with a woman who was not me. Connecting his odd behavior and changes in personality over time, I felt everything clicked. The betrayal of having believed he was looking for a job, only to find out otherwise, brought more disbelief than shock. Looking back, his inexplicable actions made sense now. The traces of an intruder were likely from the woman he brought over. The problem was who this woman was. Considering he abruptly quit his job, I suspected she might be a subordinate. Although her face was initially hidden from the camera, a change in their position eventually revealed her face briefly. Zooming in on her face for a better look, I recognized her as the saleswoman from the home builder. The betrayal hit me hard. I had empathized with and trusted her work ethic. They both betrayed me. Did she betray me without hesitation, knowing that I trusted her as a saleswoman? Or had my husband persuaded her despite her reluctance? No, it could be the other way around. Could they have been smirking behind my back, thinking they had successfully deceived me? It's infuriating. As my shock gradually turned into anger, I saved the video. I decided to keep watching to see how far these two, convinced they had fooled me, would go. My husband was showing a side to this woman that he had never shown to me, completely engrossed in their act. I felt nothing but contempt for the sordid scene. The woman was loud, not holding back in the slightest. Once they seemed satisfied, my husband began to suggest, "Let's live together in this house." Hearing this, I wondered if he had already made arrangements to leave me. I was not about to let him get the upper hand. I would be the one to confront him with divorce. That right belonged to me. Convinced of this, I called my in-laws and rushed to the nearby home improvement store. I bought a bunch of tension rods and used them to block all the windows and doors on the first floor. I thought they would notice the sound when I set up the tension rods around the house, but it seems they got carried away while I was at the home center. The two of them, now even more caught up in their passionate affair than before, were completely oblivious to my presence and the noises from outside. Once I had finished securing the entrances with the tension rods, ensuring the two inside couldn't get out, my in-laws arrived. I had called them over with the excuse that I wanted to show off our new house on short notice. They had been interested in our home since its construction phase and arrived promptly despite the sudden invitation. They were excited to see the exterior. Although they said, "I want to see the interior soon," I revealed the real reason why I had called them both here. I couldn't bring myself to say my husband is currently in the midst of an intense affair, so I showed them the surveillance footage I had saved. My mother-in-law's expression was indescribable upon seeing her son in action. It must be unsettling for a mother to see her child in such a primal state. While it's not unusual for an adult man to be intimate with a woman, it's another thing to witness your son in that context, especially when the other party is his mistress. My father-in-law, a man himself, was already shaking with anger. It seemed like more than the act of being physically intimate with someone other than his wife. What was truly unforgivable to my father-in-law is the fact that a married man was having an affair. My mother-in-law, with a mix of embarrassment and anger, turned beet red and apologized to me sincerely. My father-in-law looked like he wanted to punch his foolish son right then and there, with anger seeping through every pore. He kept apologizing to me, but you could tell from his clenched fists that were so tight as if blood might seep out that he was trying to contain his rage. They apologized again, and they were determined to stop that ludicrous behavior immediately, removing a security bar and storming into the house. By the time they barged in, my husband and his mistress had just finished their second round of intense lovemaking and seemed to be basking in the afterglow. My husband was just getting out of bed and putting on his underwear when his parents suddenly appeared, freezing him in his tracks. Next, the woman screamed and hurriedly put on the nearest clothes she could find, which, while better than being naked, still looked indecent. Hearing the woman scream snapped my husband back to reality, and he quickly finished putting on his pants, repeating why. Perhaps it's because no other words come to his mind besides that. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of them. The woman tried to escape through the window but couldn't since it was secured from the outside with tension rods. She was hysterically yelling, "What's going on here?" My husband rushed out to barricade himself on the second floor, taking advantage of the moment when my in-laws were chasing after him, and dashed upstairs. Surprisingly, my father-in-law's legs were strong, and before my husband and the woman could barricade themselves in the second floor room, he forcefully pushed open the door and entered. Come to think of it, I remember hearing that my father-in-law dedicated his youth to track and field during his student days. He still seems to run for the sake of his health. In contrast, my husband is someone who doesn't exercise at all. I thought for sure my in-laws had won, but the stubborn pair retreated into an adjacent walk-in closet, locking themselves inside.
Will you cut it out already? If you're going to run away, you shouldn't be cheating.
Why did you do this? Aren't you ashamed? Come out.
My in-laws, from behind the door, were berating my husband, saying, "Come out," shameless, and giving him a lecture. This is the last straw. I'm filing for divorce, and you'll be hearing from our lawyers about the settlement. Then the woman said, "Didn't you say we weren't going to be caught?" and blamed my husband. My husband declared, "We'll talk about that later. Right now, let's just get out of here." He wasn't giving up on the escape plan. The woman refused, fearing injury from jumping out of a second-story window. It seemed like my husband was trying to convince them, saying things like, "Is it okay if I pay compensation?" In the end, it looked like both of them jumped out of the second-floor window. As we heard a dull thud and looked outside from the second-floor room, we saw them crouching on the ground. When I went downstairs and stepped outside, both of them were saying, "Ouch, it hurts." The woman's leg was bent at an odd angle. My in-laws said, "They brought this on themselves. Leave them be." But out of a final act of mercy, I decided to call an ambulance. However, my husband was shirtless, and the woman was in nothing but underwear, covered only by my husband's shirt, presenting a scandalous sight. It was quite a sight watching how I explained the situation to the paramedics who rushed over. I watched discreetly as the two of them kept yelling, "It hurts, do something," without being able to answer any of the paramedics' questions. Given their attire, the paramedics could probably guess what had happened. Later, I visited my husband's hospital room with my lawyer and in-laws to discuss the divorce and settlement. After the incident, the hospital had contacted me. They had informed me that my husband got injured and was taken to the ER. I was told to bring his insurance card, but I did not do so. Instead, my in-laws went on my behalf and left the necessary documents at the reception before returning. It seemed they were not willing to look after my husband anymore. When I visited my husband's room, he waved at me with a smile, thinking he was forgiven. But then my in-laws appeared, and a stranger, pushing the mistress in a wheelchair, entered from another room. This stranger introduced himself as my lawyer and handed over his business card, freezing my husband's smile solid. It finally dawned on him that he wasn't forgiven. I can't help but be astounded by how hopelessly naive my husband is. How could he possibly think he would be forgiven after everything he's done? The lawyer straightforwardly informed them of the necessities, advising my husband to agree to the divorce. I informed him that even if he refused and it went to court, my stance would not change. The lawyer strongly explained the potential consequences of the case going to court, such as the negative impact on my husband's social credibility and his ability to find employment. My husband quietly responded, "I agree to the divorce." When the discussion moved on to the topic of the settlement, he also agreed to it willingly. As for the mistress, she appeared to have completely lost her will, exhibiting an attitude of indifference towards everything. My husband seemed somewhat dissatisfied, but under the stern gaze of his parents, he reluctantly agreed. Everything proceeded smoothly, for which I am grateful. Next, I demanded that my husband take responsibility for the furniture we had bought together and the new house. I told him he would also have to cover the down payment and the remaining mortgage. My father-in-law, not allowing any objections, intimidated him, but my husband didn't want to take responsibility for the house, protesting despite his fear of my father-in-law's glare.
That's ridiculous. Most of the interior design was your choice. My preferences were minimal, so why should I bear all the costs? That's unjust.
I didn't want to give up a house filled with my dreams either. I showed my husband the surveillance camera footage I had saved, because he made it come to this. How can you think I'd calmly live in a place where you brought your mistress and acted indecently? How rotten is your brain? To my cry mixed with anger and despair, the lawyer said, "We have no intention of losing even a penny, so let's fight this to the end." My mother-in-law collapsed to her knees, crying, "I never knew you were such a heartless, good-for-nothing child."
After all this, will you make not only your wife but also your mother cry? Just accept it without any more fuss.
It seemed my husband was unable to stand up to my father-in-law, ultimately being completely overwhelmed by a single remark from him. He said he would follow everything exactly as the lawyer suggested. Just as I thought everything was settled, an elderly couple, presumably in their 60s, entered my husband's hospital room. They were surprised to see my in-laws. Without concern for the onlookers, they suddenly knelt before my in-laws, uttering apologies. The words of the kneeling couple included apologies such as, "Our daughter has done something terribly rude, and we apologize for causing injury to your son this time." It seemed the mistress's parents came to visit but were looking for their daughter, who wasn't in her hospital room. It appears they were surprised to finally find the parents they intended to apologize to. However, something seemed off about my parents-in-law's reaction. There appeared to be another layer of anger, separate from the outrage towards the parents of the woman involved in the affair.
I thought it was some burglar cat, but it turns out it was your daughter.
Since my husband's affair came to light, my father-in-law seemed to be constantly irritated and furiously angry. However, his anger now is incomparable to any anger he's shown before. When I asked my mother-in-law what's going on, she explained that the parents of my husband's mistress were running a company that was subcontracted for my father-in-law's company. The company run by the mistress's parents was lax in their work, often missing deadlines and delivering poor quality, leading to numerous complaints. Despite repeated warnings, there was no improvement, so my father-in-law had mentioned ending their business relationship. However, if they were abandoned by my father-in-law's company, their subcontracting firm would quickly become unsustainable and go bankrupt. They begged not to be abandoned for the sake of a few employees' livelihoods. Faced with the welfare of the hired staff, my father-in-law, being a CEO himself, felt he couldn't simply cut them off. Under the condition that if another problem arose, they would be dropped, he had continued to give them work out of conditional compassion.
Remember the promise. I said there would be no next time. We will never do business with your company again.
With that declaration from my father-in-law, the mistress's parents forced their daughter, despite her caste, into a kneeling position. To their daughter, who struggled to kneel properly due to her caste, they demanded, "Your future depends on this, a fraction is nothing. Kneel properly and apologize." My father-in-law declared, "No apology will change my decision." While the mistress's parents pleaded, "Please somehow make an exception." The mistress was forcibly made to kneel by her parents, crying out, "It hurts, it's going to break again." A nurse rushed in upon hearing the commotion, separating the mistress and her parents. The nurse scolded them, "What are you doing to an injured person?" The mistress's parents made the scene even bigger by yelling, "Our livelihood is at stake, leave us alone." The situation escalated beyond the nurse's control, requiring security to intervene and eventually remove the mistress and her parents from my husband's hospital room. I wondered if it was their irresponsible upbringing that enabled the mistress to brazenly have an affair with a married man. I thought that while watching the behavior of the mistress's parents. By being in that hospital, I was likely to run into the mistress's parents again, and there might also be trouble regarding my father-in-law's company. Wanting to avoid such situations, I vowed never to return to that hospital again. I informed my husband that I would no longer speak to him directly and that all future communications should be through our lawyers before leaving the hospital. Later, I heard some updates from my in-laws. It seemed like the mistress's parents, facing the cessation of their business dealings due to her affair with the son of a client company, have disowned their daughter. They hadn't visited her in the hospital since the day of the incident. My ex-husband was discharged from the hospital sooner than the mistress due to his less severe injuries. He wanted to return to his parents' home until he found a job, but my father-in-law refused to allow it. Consequently, my ex-husband started living in the new house. The mistress, having nowhere else to go, moved in after her discharge. It seemed they were living together not out of love but out of necessity. sharing the expensive new house as temporary roommates until they could find somewhere else to live. The mistress had intended to find her own place immediately after discharge, but she was greeted with termination upon her return to work. Apparently, the company had wanted to fire her sooner but had to wait until she was fully recovered, as they couldn't terminate an employee undergoing medical treatment. The reason for the termination was due to inappropriate involvement with a client, causing issues. Caught off guard by the unexpected firing, the mistress apparently had no choice but to rely on my ex-husband. Both of them have ended up unemployed, but despite sharing the goal of finding jobs, saving money, and moving out, they keep quarreling and can't seem to save the necessary amount due to constant bickering. Although both want to quickly save money and sell their expensive new home, they seem to be constantly fighting, each blaming the other for their situation. My ex-husband is having a hard time with mortgage payments, and his debt is increasing to the point of being unmanageable. There are rumors of suspicious individuals loitering around their new house, likely keeping an eye on them. It seems my ex-husband may have gotten involved with some dangerous lenders. After the divorce, I received a substantial amount of money from the settlement. As planned, I got promoted, so as a reward to myself, I decided to build a house filled with all my dreams. Having long admired Scandinavian interior design, I found a store that specialized in it and imagined building a house that would complement the furniture I discovered there. The happiest moments are when I'm immersed in the vision of my ideal home in my mind. This time, I vow to realize my dream without any interference from anyone.
She gave me a triumphant look. She looked as if she thought, I have an overwhelming advantage. What an annoying woman.
Give my regards to your husband. Try to get along for the rest of your lives.
What an insensitive and rude woman. This was just too much. She was not right as a person. I wanted to criticize her arrogant attitude head-on, but I held back. I wanted to give her a more fitting punishment. A punishment that would make her suffer, cry, and beg for forgiveness. I'm getting a divorce from my husband. He wants that too. Apparently, it's no fun for her that I don't show my emotions. She glared at me with an unusually aggressive look. I glared right back at her. There's no reason to be afraid of this woman. I'll knock her down to hell with all my might right now. I played my first card. My name is Kate, and I'm 41 years old. I work in sales administration at a certain trading company. I met my husband, Thomas, through a mutual friend. At that time, I was 29. He was 30. I can't believe you got a boyfriend. I remember my dad being surprised. My mom and dad thought I was too shy for marriage. To be honest, I was surprised myself. I thought I'd always be single. His forwardness was a godsend for a shy person like me.
I want 2 kids. A girl first, then a boy.
Yay, me too. Let's work hard together from now on. We were very happy when we were newlyweds. I thought this happiness would last forever. But where did it all go wrong? Gradually, Thomas' attitude toward me grew colder. What caused him to change? Was it because we couldn't have children? We both had fertility tests and found no issues. We tried to time it right, watch our diet, and did everything we could. Unfortunately, years passed and we still couldn't conceive. I wonder why. Even the clinic doctor was puzzled. I suggested trying artificial insemination to Thomas. But he said,
Let's just leave it to nature. No need to force it.
"What's gotten into you? Don't you want kids anymore?"
I didn't say that. I just said I want to leave it to nature.
Thinking back, his attitude towards me had already changed by then. He became extremely cold, and his words grew harsh. No matter how hard I tried to mend our relationship, he remained indifferent. No matter how much I tried, he never responded as cheerily as before. "Hey, why don't we go on a trip next holiday? Remember, the resort hotel we stayed at a few years ago?"
No, I can't. I have plans for the next break. Didn't I tell you? I have a business trip to another state.
"Oh, really? I didn't hear that, sorry." He wouldn't even consider a trip or a meal out. "It feels like he's lost interest in me a long time ago," was the impression I got. Soon, he started using only words like shower and dinner in front of me. It was like we were an old married couple. There was no conversation at all, and I became mostly silent too. "Maybe something will change if we just had a child," I once thought, and took some action myself. For someone as reserved as me, initiating intimacy was a huge step. But the worst response came back. He snickered and mocked me even though he knew I was asking him to bed.
Sorry, I'm tired from work. I don't have the energy to deal with this.
Well, if that's the case, I won't force you. I can't forget the humiliation I felt when he refused. I was so scared and embarrassed to ask him to the bed since then. In cases where one spouse unilaterally refuses intimacy without any particular reason, divorce may be granted. I wanted to know why he was rejecting me and asked him directly, "Hey, don't you want kids anymore? Have you given up?"
What are you talking about all of a sudden? I haven't thought that.
Then why are you so cold to me? Don't you see it's contradictory?
Hey, cut it out. You're being desperate and it's annoying.
He clicked his tongue and turned his back on me. Eventually, he stopped interacting with me altogether. When he was home, he'd just look at his smartphone or watch TV, never trying to talk. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me. Even words like shower and dinner stopped coming. When I called out, he ignored me, so I gradually stopped speaking to him too. My sighs became more frequent, and my loneliness just kept growing. What's the reason? I wondered, but I couldn't figure it out. He was having an affair. I found out about it around the 8th fall of our marriage. How did I know? Because I happened to see his smartphone. Usually, he took it with him even to the shower, but that day, he accidentally left it in the living room. There was an incoming call on it. The caller's name was Rachel. As far as I knew, there was no one by that name among his relatives or friends. Maybe someone from work, but it seemed too casual for such an important contact. Curious, I asked him straight after he got out of his shower. "There was a call from someone named Rachel. Who is that?"
It's nobody.
It's not nobody if you've saved the number, right?
It's none of your business. Don't make a fuss. I'm tired.
I fought. There it is again, I muttered to myself. He thinks if he says he's tired, I'll back down. It seemed he felt uncomfortable being pressed about this Rachel. That must mean she's his affair partner. It was as good as admitting it. I was incredibly upset, and I couldn't sleep well that night. A few days later, something incredibly painful happened. My dad, who lives back home, died in a car accident, a relative informed me. I had lost my mom to illness when I was in high school. Since then, it had been just my dad and me. Losing my precious dad deepened my grief. Yet my husband said,
I'm sorry, but I can't make it to his funeral. I have a business trip scheduled.
What? Just call your office and have someone cover for you.
It's too late for a replacement. It's impossible at this point. So, I can't go?
In the end, he really didn't come to the funeral. Even though it was his father-in-law who had passed. He clearly didn't care about my family, let alone me. It was painfully obvious, and it hurt so much. I must do something drastic to win back my husband's heart. That feeling drove me to a bold move. I then hired a private detective. I didn't care about the cost. I asked for a background check, and after about 2 months, I got the results. Using the information I obtained, I called his affair partner to meet. The place was a nice cafe on the first floor of a hotel. The woman who appeared was a striking beauty with an assertive air. Nice to meet you. You must be Rachel.
You know who I am, don't you? So, what do you want?
Please end your relationship with Thomas.
That's something you need to discuss with him. He's just my client.
Rachel was an alias for work. Her real name was Rebecca. She was paid to provide dubious sexual services to men. I'm just meeting on a request. It's strictly business, Rebecca seemed to imply. Her attitude was indescribably infuriating.
Do you understand? Blaming me is misguided. And by the way, ma'am, have you reflected? Do you know why your husband would use a service like ours?
Are you saying it's my fault?
Who else could it be? He had to ask a professional because you weren't satisfying him, right?
What a brazen woman. But I couldn't respond. I had no idea how to counter her. Rebecca sneered at me as I looked down, then got up and strode away. I felt so miserable, and I couldn't hold back my tears. I think my husband must have heard about our meeting from Rebecca. His actions became even bolder and more frequent than before. He started staying out without prior notice and came home in the mornings more often. As his behavior changed, so did my reaction. I became indifferent, no longer upset about his late returns. Another late night must be nice. Were you with Rebecca, or should I say Rachel?
It's none of your business.
You can't just spend the night with another woman and then say it doesn't matter.
I'm tired. Stop nagging.
He retorted, brushing past me toward the shower. His body reeked of a cloying perfume. Rebecca must have smelled him on purpose when he left. That is her message to me. What a blatant provocation. She must be enjoying stirring me up. If it were years ago, I might have tried to fight the rivalry somehow. But now, I felt no such inclination. It's useless to fight, it'll just wear me out, I thought. I realized I no longer saw any charm in winning back my husband's affection. Honestly, let's just get a divorce. All this time, I avoided thinking about it. That's because I had a strong feeling we got married. Someday we will understand each other, I hoped. But now I felt it's hopeless, it's useless to keep trying. I felt pathetic for having dragged this on for 10 years. I prepared the divorce papers, had a friend fill out the witness section, and slowly started getting things in order. But then, what a strange thing life is. Just when I had made up my mind to divorce, another problem arose. My husband started complaining of his health issues. After some tests, it turned out he had cancer. Confined to a hospital bed for long-term treatment, he joked bitterly, "Looks like karma caught up with me."
It's because I made Kate suffer. How does that feel, Kate?
Stop talking nonsense. Just focus on your treatment. Honestly, if I said it didn't feel somewhat satisfying, it would be a lie. Though a part of me felt vindicated. I wasn't about to stoop to gloating to a sick person. I'll just dutifully care for him as his partner, I told myself. It was a little while after his illness came to light that I noticed something was off with my possessions. My mom's keepsake ring was missing. Upon further check, some of my necklaces and bags were also gone. I brought it up while bringing him clothes to the hospital, asking him, "Have you seen them or taken them by any chance?"
I don't know anything about it. I've never touched your things without your permission.
When was the last time you communicated with Rebecca?
You think Rebecca took them? No way. I haven't heard from her in about half a year.
He said it was unlikely, but I couldn't think of anyone else. It seemed he really didn't know. So, I'd have to check with her myself. And just in case, I had taken all possible precautions. It's a hassle because it takes time, but I resolved to check when I got home. Depending on what I found, I might have to consult the police or a lawyer. A month later, Thomas was scheduled for surgery. The doctor turned pale when he saw his body, I heard from a nurse. I was surprised when the nurse told me about it. I hadn't seen my husband undressed for a long time, so I didn't notice it at all. I never thought his body would end up like this. I heard the detailed story from the nurse and took notes. I called Rebecca the next day. The place was a different cafe from last time. It was bigger and more crowded. Rebecca arrived with the same confidence as before. She had a defiant attitude. Her face said, "I've done nothing wrong."
What brings you here today? I'd prefer if we could keep this brief.
That depends on you. By the way, did you already know Thomas has cancer?
Yes, I heard from him. He said he was feeling unwell and hadn't contacted me for a while. Then suddenly he tells me this. I was shocked.
I see. His surgery was successful, so I thought I'd let you know. Good for him, Rebecca laughed, seemingly indifferent. That makes sense. To her, Thomas is just another client. Even if they seemed close, it was probably just superficial. Not getting too emotionally involved with clients is Rebecca's work stance, I suppose. She seemed to be getting a bit mischievous. Rebecca looked up at me with a teasing glance.
Hey, why don't you sleep with your husband one more time before he passes away? You know, humans try to leave descendants at their last moment.
Please stop. That's very insensitive to say.
But it's true, right? You've been through a lot because you couldn't have kids. Why not take a last chance? You might get lucky.
Rebecca laughed out loud. For the first time, I felt a clear hostility towards her. I'm going to make her regret this, I fought strongly. Can we get to the point, Rebecca? You were having more than a professional relationship with Thomas, weren't you? Basically, you were having an affair, right?
Not at all. It was strictly business.
Really? I think a lawyer will contact you.
That would be a waste. I've dealt with similar situations before. It's really annoying. It's strictly business.
Rebecca was smiling, but I noticed something different. The smile she had just a moment ago was gone. There was a slight stiffness. She was definitely lying. It was clearly a forced smile. You're lying, aren't you? If you get a call from a lawyer, aren't you in trouble?
Not at all. You're being persistent. Don't people tell you that you're troublesome?
Such an irritating woman. She seems to think she's overwhelmingly superior. But I can tell now. This confident attitude is just a facade. The real Rebecca is wrapped up in things she wouldn't want people to know about. You might still have a chance if you admit to the affair with Thomas and apologize me now. That's the least damaging path for you.
Don't act like you know everything. You're a failed wife who can't satisfy her husband. I hate it when flawed women like you act all high and mighty.
If that's how you feel, I have no choice. I'll let your husband, James, know everything.
Why bring James into this?
Yes, Rebecca is married. She had hidden the fact that she was married from Thomas. And she must have thought I only knew what Thomas told me. However, I had hired a detective agency to investigate Rebecca and my husband's relationship and, of course, Rebecca's background. She was indeed married. She has been married to James for 5 years. As soon as her marriage was mentioned, Rebecca lost her composure. Her breathing became erratic. What's wrong? Your breathing is rough. Why don't you calm down?
That's problem. A lawyer would be problematic. My husband doesn't know anything about my job. Please don't tell him. He's not involved. It's a problem between you, me, and Thomas, right?
Are you serious? Do you think I'm just going to say okay? Don't underestimate me. I'm not that naive. Our roles had reversed. Sweating, Rebecca was clearly shaken. She had no idea how much I knew. She probably never thought I would fight back this much. She must have underestimated me as a clumsy and quiet woman. To be honest, I'm quite surprised myself. I've never known myself to be this assertive in public before. It must be because my anger is so intense. Rebecca herself gave me the chance to change. After all, she did something she absolutely shouldn't have. I leaned forward and glared at Rebecca. I'm very angry with you. Not only did you have an affair with Thomas, but you've also committed a crime. You know what I'm talking about, right?
What? I don't understand.
Don't play dumb. You stole my mom's keepsake ring, didn't you? The other customers at nearby tables began to glance over at us. Rebecca slumped, looking down and curling up as if shrinking. Her posture was as good as a confession. I did not ease up on her. You entered my room without my permission and stole my bags and necklaces, right?
That's not true. Those were. Thomas said it was okay to borrow.
All lies. I checked with Thomas, and he had no idea that my mom's ring was missing. Why don't you just give up and be honest? I pointed my smartphone screen at her. Rebecca turned pale immediately. No wonder. The screen showed her rummaging through my room. Her posture was pathetic, resembling that of a petty thief. Ever since I suspected Thomas' actions, I've installed cameras and voice recorders all over our home. I've gathered quite some interesting evidence.
No, really, cameras. Where did you put them?
All over the house, including our bedroom. Unfortunately for you, they also captured you and Thomas doing something in our bedroom. If I submit this evidence to the police, Rebecca's guilt will be certain. She would likely face a fine for theft. Rebecca was already on the verge of tears. She clasped her hands together, pleadingly looking at me.
Please, I'll retrieve the ring and return it to you for sure. So please, don't tell James. I'm really in trouble. He knows nothing.
Damn, you're a bitch. You sold my mom's ring, my necklaces and bags too. Unbelievable. I'll need to hear more about that later.
I'm sorry, but I really will retrieve them. So please, keep this from James. Please.
Unfortunately, it's too late for that, because... I pointed behind Rebecca. With a stunned face, Rebecca turned around. Unbeknownst to her, sitting at the table behind us was her husband, James. Rebecca gasped. Why in dismay? But the person who deserved more pity was James. He knew nothing until I contacted him. He had thought of Rebecca as a quiet and virtuous wife.
Rebecca, I'm shocked. You were cheating and you were doing that kind of job. Wasn't my earnings enough for you?
No, that's... James, listen,
Rebecca, or should I say Rachel, you're the queen, right? You've been pleasing many men behind my back during the day. I'm shocked.
James, it's not like that.
Rebecca finally began to cry. It seemed painful for her to have everything known by her husband. In fact, Rebecca was well known in her establishment for her dominatrix play. She was skilled at exciting men by tying them up and whipping them. The doctor was shocked when he saw my husband's back. It was because there were multiple marks from being whipped. I didn't know about such preferences of Thomas until he confessed to me.
I believed in you, and it hurt me a lot. I couldn't believe the cheating, the queen play, or the theft. But is it all true?
It's not. I'm sorry. But it's not like that.
What's not true? Everything is true, isn't it? Just admit it. While I felt sorry for James, Rebecca needed to acknowledge her sins. Her job as a dominatrix didn't matter. And there are two problems. The issues were the affair and the theft. Let's go to the police station together, I suggested, but Rebecca clung to the table, refusing.
No, I absolutely won't go. I'll stay put right here, no matter what.
You're really bad at giving up. Cut it out already.
If you keep being selfish, I'll have to resort to my next step. Do you really want to worsen your situation even more?
What are you talking about?
The screen showed a man about our age. She must realize it deep down. She has other secrets she wouldn't want exposed. If only she would be honest sooner, I wouldn't have to do this. I pointed my smartphone screen at Rebecca again.
Hey, Rebecca, I heard it. What's this about? You were married.
Damn it, Mark. No way. How do you know about Mark?
His name is Mark. He was another of Rebecca's lovers. He had a relationship with her before Thomas and was discarded earlier. And it wasn't just a simple breakup. He had been treated harshly by Rebecca. Sorry, but I'm thorough. I've investigated everything. I found out you borrowed a large sum of money from Mark and ran off.
You borrowed money and ran away? Rebecca, you did that too?
Rebecca, you better pay back the $25,000 I lent you.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Rebecca wasn't just any dominatrix. She was a dominatrix with extravagant spending habits. She would form personal and intimate relationships with her clients to extract money from them. If not that, she'd steal valuable items. And then, she'd turn those items into cash. My mom's keepsake ring had been stolen while Thomas was in the shower. I figured it out by cross-referencing footage from different cameras at the same time. There's no mistake. When I explained this, Rebecca probably thought there was nothing more she could do and began to cry.
I'm truly sorry. I really apologize.
I'm sorry isn't enough, is it? I'm going to call the police now.
Please do not that. I'll do anything.
That's not the point. You need to atone for your crimes properly. There might be even more to Rebecca's crimes. I can say for sure there aren't other men who were victimized by her before Mark, I said, and James sighed heavily. I can't take this anymore, his expression said.
Let's get a divorce, Rebecca. I can't do this with you anymore.
James, no. Don't say that. Don't leave me.
It's inevitable. How can a man continue a marital relationship knowing his partner has had sexual relations with other men regularly? I can't handle it.
No, I absolutely won't get a divorce.
Rebecca's voice was tearful, but no matter how much she resisted, it was probably futile. The things she had done were seriously malicious, including criminal acts. If the argument escalated and we went to court, the divorce would likely be granted. Rebecca's desperate resistance might be because she realizes this. James turned to me and apologized.
Kate, I am truly sorry for what has happened. I promise you, Rebecca and I will find your mother's keepsake ring and return it to you. Rebecca, apologize properly.
Yes, Kate, I'm sorry.
All right, please make sure to return the ring and pay Mark back. Also, go to the police station on your own and explain everything properly. Rebecca slumped over the table and started crying. The other customers and staff at the cafe looked over, wondering what was happening. It was a pitiful sight, but honestly, I thought it served her right. she had caused too much suffering to those around her. This level of hardship was only fair. Afterward, James promised Mark that he would definitely repay the money. Thus, our discussion, disrupted by Rebecca's actions, came to a temporary close. A few days after our exchange at the cafe, I received a message from James. He had managed to buy back the ring from the buyer and would send it to me later. I was grateful for his prompt response. My mom would have been pleased too.
Rebecca and I are officially divorced. She put up quite a fight, but after appearing at the police station, she quieted down. She probably didn't want to cause any more trouble.
Where is she now? At the police station?
No, she was fine and is probably back in her hometown now. It's a small rural town. She came to the downtown area because she hated her local area, but
she's going back to her hometown, which she hated. James ended up paying Mark's debt in place of Rebecca. Now, Rebecca is slowly repaying James. She has taken a part-time job at a local supermarket. It's unclear when she will finish paying off her debts. I hope she manages to pull through. James also shared more about Rebecca. When they divorced, he refused to split any property with her.
She cheated, accrued debt, played the role of a dominatrix. I honestly didn't want to share any property with someone who did all that behind my back.
So, you refuse the division of property. Normally in a divorce, the property acquired during the marriage is split equally between both parties, right?
Yes, she insisted on half, so it ended up going to court.
Unfortunately, James's argument was rejected. Regardless of the reasons, property division cannot be refused, was the verdict. However, Rebecca is guilty of cheating and theft. Those facts about her never go away. Ultimately, she was ordered to pay James compensation in the form of alimony and damages. As a result, the property left to Rebecca was significantly reduced. She was reportedly furious and distraught, crying, "This is unbelievable." But it was simply karma. She should just work hard and repay the remaining debt to James as soon as possible, I thought.
By the way, Kate, what happened with Thomas, who was ill?
Yes, I also got divorced. He told me, "You don't need to come to the hospital anymore." I suppose that was his way of showing remorse, in his own way. His surgery was successful. However, there's no guarantee that cancer won't be found again in the future. He told me he didn't want to cause any more trouble, and that I didn't need to visit him anymore. I'll never forget the look in his eyes as he gazed into the distance on our last visit. It was then that he signed the divorce papers. Thank you, I'll go file these. I don't think I'll be coming here anymore. Are you really sure about this?
Yeah. Forget about me. I'm sorry, Kate.
Then, goodbye. That was the last time I saw my ex-husband. In a way, his severe illness is already a form of punishment. I have no intention of blaming him any further. But I will never see him again. The actions of one woman, driven by greed, brought misery to many people. I am one of those victims. Even now, it makes me incredibly angry. However, I was able to administer a fitting punishment and saw her crying face. I could also impose social sanctions, and I think, for now, this is good enough. About 6 months after the divorce, I started dating someone new. He was introduced by a client's boss and is quite handsome. He's also divorced, so there's no need to be cautious, which is good. I don't know if we'll marry, but I hope we can continue this pleasant relationship. It doesn't have to be tied down by marriage. There are many forms of happiness. I want to find our own way with my new partner, step by step. Right now, I am living each day with a generous spirit.